Hey team, Macho Models here. I know it's about 2 months after the fact, but I really wanted to shoot an ODO wrap-up video because we had an awesome event this year. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy kind of hearing my summary thoughts on how it went and kind of a big picture overview about ODO, and then also too kind of how it's a test for the community or maybe a good indication of the community and how we're doing it and how we're striving. So this is my second year being a big part of it, being an organizer, being present there, and the community aspect was ridiculous this year. So the previous year, I think we maybe had a couple more folks, not by much. But this year the turnout was still great. I mean, there was about 20 to 25 super enthusiastic Gundam/tiny robot enthusiasts there, which is more than I could ever potentially ask for. But it was awesome. It was super fun. And as you'll see when I cut away to the video here, I had a really cool, there's a lot of good interactions. So Crow-sama talking at Gunpla University. Donnie was talking to this really cool builder from North Carolina. I apologize that his name escapes me. And then to the award ceremony, that was super fun. It was awesome to see a bunch of folks get recognized for the hard work that they put into their builds. And in turn, it was really great to see their work exposed to the IPMS community. And overall, we were exceptionally well received. I remember like about a year or two ago, a lot of the grumblings about the IPMS crowd and, insert whatever non sequitur into the conversation that you want. But I really feel like over the last year, a lot of that stuff has dissipated, and a lot of the Gunpla members have gotten really integrated into IPMS community, and that's phenomenal. And kind of the through line for me with regards to that is seeing folks get awards and seeing the smiles on their face. And we also had a lot of like first-time award winners too. And IPMS ODO is no joke. I'll talk here in a moment about the quality of kits, but it's a big show and a lot of people bring their best work. So if you want some iron there, you should be very proud. The next area I want to talk to is the build quality. So this is the area I'm also super excited about. I'm very excited about the community coming together, but the build quality was so good this year. So the way that the categories broke out, it was a little bit different. Last year, it was strictly done by sizes. And so this year, there was another quotient, which was universal century versus non-universal century. And admittedly, I was kind of surprised. I had thought that Joel had waded into the waters with the IPMS crowd, and they had figured out the categories together. But as it turns out, that kind of organically came up from the IPMS crew. So if there's any IPMS folks that are watching and said, hey, I was the person who thought of how the categories are split, bravo, that was fantastic. So the categories that they had this year were 1/144th, and then it was either non-universal century or universal century, and then master grades as well. And so it was universal century and then non-universal century. So if you had a PG, it would go in the master grade and up category, or if you had an SD, it would go in the 1/144th and down. So for all intents and purposes, there was 4 categories, and then there's also an overall best Gundam, which is awesome because a lot of these hobby shows, they won't necessarily award a best of, but I've been seeing a lot of best Gundam come about. So I mentioned earlier the build quality was up. We didn't have as many entries, which is completely fine because I love quality over quantity. So last year, I think we had something like 96 entries, and then this year it came in about 70. So not a huge delta, but the build quality was so much better. The quality on all the kits was way up. There was a lot more creativity, especially in the 1/144th class. I couldn't believe like the amount of creativity people pumped into this and how they really went after it. Another great aspect along that lines is how people really built their own kits. So for instance, there was a lot of kind of like factory finishes where, red Sazabi and red Sazabi went on the table in previous years. The variety was ridiculous. I saw like a lot of very individual kits that people put a lot of time and energy into and really made their own, which was awesome and definitely constituted for the high quality kits that entered into ODO this year. With regards to areas for improvement, so one that's always a heartbreaker for me, and I've talked about this a bunch with Joel and on some other live streams, and I'm hoping crystallizing this into this video format might stick it for some other folks, is posing. So I see a bunch of folks where their kits, they put hours and hours into them, and they look gorgeous on their own, but they get to the posing, the last line before it ends up on the competition table, and the posing is off. So there was a lot of second and third place kits where we would have a really, really solidly well built kit up against a kit that was pretty well built. This is the third place, mind you, right? But the third place, the person who maybe didn't have his like custom of paint apps or didn't do like a ton of pre-shading, their posing was rock solid, right? So immediately, bang, they go here. And then the person who put a ton more time into the painting, if the presentation doesn't hit, it's a really hard piece to sell. So I would encourage anybody, who maybe didn't win any iron at ODO or is entering a competition in the near future to really think hard about posing. And I think there's a lot of conversation too about locking down joints. And I know for myself, for my next Gundam build, I'm going to look to fix my positions. So really think about posing. You don't want to get swept at the knees right at the last second. The other little area that I wanted to hit on in terms of room for improvement is if you're entering a Gundam competition, especially in IPMS, there's a ton of room in the non-Universal Century areas. So the Universal Century areas were packed. There was really, really dense competition. Like, for instance, in the Master Grade competition, the first place winner was Tim with Airdrop. Second place was John with his Sniper Wolf, and then third place was Justinius. Those are like three really big heavy hitters, but I can say definitively that the non-Universal Century category was like a bit of a grab bag. So it's just to say that for your competition planning, and I know personally myself, when I get into IPMS contests, I'm going to look to build in the non-Universal Century first, and then if I get my non-Universal Century build done, then I'll focus on my Universal Century build. So I just talked a moment ago about Best in Show, and this was a total nail biter at IPMS this year because of two reasons. Number one, I should say they're both one and the same in this sense. Tim came with Airdrop, right? So effectively, you're bringing the best of the best from our community, right? So you have Tim, who is an incredibly accomplished builder. We've all seen Airdrop. And if you haven't, I encourage you to go take a look at it if you're just catching this video dry. And there was a Best of Show award, and we also had Joel there as one of the head judges. So I was super excited to see how Airdrop was going to encounter the IPMS crowd. And again, for any of you guys who might not know what Airdrop is, Tim built this. It's incredible, Child of Mecha, and effectively he entered it in GBWC. It's Gundam, and you can look all this stuff up if you're unfamiliar with it, and or I can talk to it in another video. He goes to IPMS. There's a best of. And for those of you who haven't seen IPMS competition, when it comes to best of, what happens is all the head judges get together and then they run around to each of the tables, and then head judge says, this is what I would consider in terms of best of. And then all the head judges take a look. They pop their flashlights out. They really get in there deep with it, and they sit and they converse. It's a lot of good scramble, and it's a really fun thing to be a part of because they're screaming around, but also emotions are flying, people are talking, people are passionate about it, and kind of see that come through. So Joel was there, and I thought he did a brilliant job of talking to the IPMS crowd. There was a whole number of questions that I'm sure he's going to talk to in a later podcast, but they were asking, what was this kit originally? How much time did he put into it? What's the background? And Joel hit every single note. So in terms of a Gundam winning, best of at an IPMS show, a big IPMS show, I thought we had a really good shot. So Tim's armor analog is a gentleman by the name of, I'm going to look down, it's Mike Trent-Tadu. I tried to find him online. I was hoping he had like a Facebook or an Instagram page. I'm sure he does, but and I'll try to track him down to see where he hangs his work. But he's incredible. So he won Best in Show last year for this desert long range kit where it was like early 1940s, and it's British soldiers traveling through the desert, and it's this beautifully built diorama, and he brought it at his game again this year. So he had this World War II diorama that was out of this world where, effectively he, Tim did all this incredible scratch build work. He also did an incredible amount of scratch built work, right? Where Mike is like building trees and cutting leaves and making, you know, animals and figures to be able to fit into it, and his paint work, his abs. It was a great competition in my mind. You know, it's Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed at the end of Rocky 3, where you don't know who wins the match. However, Mike came out on top with the best of award. That being said, it was a phenomenal education process for, I think, the IPMS crowd. And as Tim summarized it when I talked to him afterwards, because I was really excited to kind of tell him this backstory about the two big titans of their fields meeting head to head for the best of award. He said, you know, they just simply aren't ready, and that's a fair way to put it. I mean, the other piece too is it's an education process and it's a communication process. And in terms of, you know, a huge win for IPMS, I think we definitely pushed the needle in terms of interest and Gundam and those folks understanding what we're getting into. So that was huge. Along the exact same lines, another big piece that's I'm passionate about is bridging the gap between the different communities. So you have your Gundam folks, and then, you know, you have your armor and your aircraft and your automobile. And IPMS is a brilliant way to be able to bridge the gap. In 2019, I thought it was a really good introduction into Gundam. In 2020, I really felt like we were all starting to come together. I felt like there was a lot of really good, passionate conversations from non-Gundam folks with Gundam folks. So I think some of the lines, as I kind of mentioned before, are starting to dissolve. And I absolutely felt that when I was at ODO. And it's just to say that if you're an outside observer, or if you're thinking about getting into this, you know, IPMS or competition community, I would highly encourage you to get in there. The first year, you know, it might be, you know, not as completely smooth as you want to, but I really feel like this year we like settled into like a good groove, and we all felt really comfortable there, and we had some brilliant interactions, and I'm super proud about how the Gundam crowd managed to bridge the gap. That being said, going into 2021, I would really like to see some Gundam folks cross-pollinate. So I'll give you a good, for instance, my hero at IPMS this year was a builder named Raphael, who came up from North Carolina, and he entered in maybe 4 or 5 different categories and won iron in every single one of those categories. So in terms of a you know, aspirational piece for building, if you can take your build skill set and compete in a number of different categories and win, I think that's the coolest thing in the world. And I know personally that's what I'm striving towards. Gundam is phenomenal. I'm super passionate about it, but I want to be able to take those skills and apply them to different areas. And I also want to be able to take different modeling areas and then apply it back to Gundam. And I think there's this big ecosystem of learning and understanding. So last but not least is the prizes. Joel and I talked on a live stream about giving the 4 award winners for each of the categories a Gundam to be able to give away on their profile. We are tracking that. So actually, I just mailed Joel my 2 kits last week, and I'm guessing he's going to pull those 2 kits, and then we're going to contact the 4 winners, and we're going to get them their kits. And what we're trying to do is we want to promote accomplishment. So we see a lot in our Gundam community, people saying, hey, I had 1,000 viewers, I had 1,500 viewers, I had 2,000 viewers. It's time for a giveaway. Cool, that's great. We want to start promoting winners, so promoting people who put their work out there, who push themselves and challenge themselves. I feel like a lot of those times people are reserved about it, and they're feeling modest. We want to bring that out and say, hey, you know, you've done some really awesome work. I think it's time that the community recognized you. So we will be getting you those kits, and I really look forward to seeing how that's received by the Gundam community, especially in the giveaway area. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys hanging out and hearing about ODO and the IPMS crowd. If you aren't already involved in your IPMS chapter, I hope that this video inspires you to get out there and to interact with them, and then also compete. I'm going to do another follow-on video, hopefully in a month or two, talking to competition mindset. But I just wanted to highlight ODO and then really pat everybody on the back for coming out this year and bringing kick-ass entries and just being really good spirited people to hang around. I really felt like it was a great event. It's super great to see everybody and come together as a big fun weirdo robot community. And I can't wait for next year. And I'm really curious to see where this event evolves. Keep sending me those work in progress builds. I love all my little side chats with everybody and seeing what you guys are getting after. And of course, whatever you guys are working on, I hope you make it macho.